perspective presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following a few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow. Welcome to our show. Thanks for being with us. I'm Harry Greenberger, the host for the show. And my guest today is the Reverend Jim Vanderweele, who is the pastor at the Community Church Unitarian Universalist. That's a long name for a church.
Yes.
Jim and I have known each other for quite some time. And we have a topic to talk about today, which has to do with atheism and churches and how they may interact or even combine. And before we get to, and this was brought about by an event which occurred in Baton Rouge very recently. But before we talk about that event, I just wanted to read something that was in the June 28th issue of the Times-Picayune in a very long article about atheism, and this came to me as a surprise. It says, a new, quote, godless congregation, unquote, for atheists in London called the Sunday Assembly that opened last fall was immediately jammed with more than 1,000 people and had to open up in other locations. That came as a surprise to me, and I hadn't heard about it before. But what instigated my request for Jim to come talk to us today was an event that happened in the month of June in Baton Rouge. And a man whose name is Jerry DeWitt, a former preacher from Derrida, Louisiana, and now a well-known figure in the atheist movement, has organized what he described as the first secular church service in Louisiana. The event was held in Baton Rouge at the Hilton Baton Rouge Capitol Center. There was music, preaching, meeting new people, and reconnecting with old friends. It was a church service. There just wasn't any God. Instead of hymns or gospel, DeWitt said jazz and zydeco are both types of music that are easy to celebrate with. Now, when all of this occurred, and of course the members of our New Orleans Secular Humanist Association were very much interested in what occurred in Baton Rouge, and in fact Jerry DeRitter, after he renounced his religion and gave up his the church that he was associated with, came to our meeting in New Orleans. In fact, it was our annual banquet, and he said at that meeting, "This is the first time I have ever been in a room full of atheists." So we have known Jerry DeRitter. Since then, he has gone on to become a national figure as ministers who without religion. Now, when all of this happened, the group, the internet site where our organization has conversation with each other, there was great discussion about the event in Baton Rouge, and many said, well, we don't need that because we can just go to the Unitarian church, which welcomes atheists. Why do we need another church to do this? And the other people arguing against it said the Unitarian church still believes in a supernatural deity, and so it is a religion, and this discussion went on and on. So I thought I should go to someone who can answer all of our questions. So, Jim, talk to us about how the Unitarian Universalist Church may be different from what they did in Baton Rouge, or why we do or do not need what they did in Baton Rouge, and take it from there.
I find this very interesting because here we have someone who is a minister and well-trained as a preacher. As a matter of fact, I think Jerry has preaching in his bones.
Absolutely, he does.
You know, and so he becomes an atheist, and he does that through process of skepticism.
Yes.
And so he, like so many other people, I think that this country is filled with people who have in their mind and their mind's eye paid close attention to the teachings of their churches, and that many have said, upon some deep investigation, if they are truly willing to do some heart searching, that something about what they are being taught in church just does not fly for them.
They are skeptics.
Yes. And so here we have a problem for the atheists in that you have in your midst, of all people, a preacher. And that's a bit of a difficulty to take people in. And
however, we welcome this ex-minister who says, I'm now on your side.
Right. And that's good, but it leads to questions. It has led to internal questions.
Absolutely.
Inside of your group.
Yes.
And we also had Jerry come and speak with us. I think it was the second time he came to town. He came and had a presentation in our church, and I was very pleased to hear him. And that is the point at which I realized very quickly that preaching's in his bones. He just knows that approach to dealing with people, and he is looking for a place in which he can
perform.
Yes, in which he can reach people. And I think it would be a very successful, should he choose to do so, he would be a very successful Unitarian Universalist minister.
I was about to ask you, when he did his talk at your church, I expect it was much more theatrical than what you do or other UU ministers might do. Am I right about that? Like when you say he's a preacher, would you describe yourself as a preacher?
No, I struggle with becoming a preacher.
Oh, okay. All right.
But some people are just born into that. I would say that in a way I write an essay and I deliver an essay.
Okay, but he was born
topic.
into it. You're correct. He was born into it.
Right, and it's crept into him, in a deep way. So, but to your question, as Unitarian Universalists, we welcome people no matter what your faith is.
I know that you do because I've been to your churches.
Right. And I do not think that I would say it is correct that one of the phrases that I heard in there, that we believe in
supernatural.
Believe in God, or
right.
Although some churches do, and this is the interesting thing, is that when you get a group of people together as Unitarian Universalists, we are open to the spirit of those who there gather.
the spirit.
Right.
No, I don't know what that means as opposed to their intellectual philosophy. What is the spirit? What does that mean?
Well, the spirit might include celebrating the solstice and celebrating Gaia's presence in our life, living with an earth-centeredness.
Naturalism.
Very natural.
Okay.
But the spirit might include a close proximity to a Christian tradition out of which people were raised and which still appeals to the minister
when
in
they
that
talk about
congregation.
Christianity, and as I would view it, it's a philosophy of the golden rule: do unto others, and you say that's a good Christian when you do that.
Yes.
But it does go beyond that. It does,
Yes.
an acceptance of Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Now, regarding the UU churches, I took this out of the internet, and it says, our Unitarian Universalist principles. And they're all really good principles, but there are two of them I would like to mention.
Okay.
It says Unitarian Universalism draws from many sources direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. And then one of the other sources says, these principles and sources of faith are the backbone of our religious community. So under the Unitarian Universalist principles, they call themselves a religious community.
Right.
Doesn't that mean a belief in a supernatural being?
For some it will, and for some
it doesn't
won't.
necessarily. The word religious doesn't necessarily mean that.
It does not necessarily mean that. No.
But you don't reject it.
We don't reject it. We don't reject it. I believe that in many places religion comes very close to philosophy. That, as a matter of fact, several of the supreme religious leaders on the face of our planet, I would say Jesus, I would point to Lao Tzu, I would point to the Buddha as well, point to a way of life, an approach toward life.
Yes.
And religion does the same thing. It tees it up with a whole bunch of other things, and as you look at quite a number of different faiths. But religion is about an approach to life.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure that would be what the dictionary definition of religion would say.
And so, as Unitarian Universalists, our religion is focused on an approach to life which is based on some principles that we affirm and promote together as people.
You have good principles, I would acknowledge that. But when you talk about other religions, take Catholicism, that church is not so much interested in an approach to life as they are in having control over people's minds. That is the way I view it. Now, and that is what we as atheists or agnostics, that's what we reject.
I do not view it the same way.
Well,
okay, so let me start right
sure,
there.
Okay.
I do not view it the same way because I've done some work with Catholic charities here in this city. And I have seen the work of many people who are Catholic to try to work for people who don't have the same advantages that others do.
I was not suggesting there were no good Catholics.
Yes. I know, and that gets a little tricky, but I would say that Catholicism, too, is about a way of life. It has a few of its wrinkles to it that are a little bit different than the wrinkles of the faith tradition in which I was raised or certainly with Unitarian Universalism. But we have people who, as Unitarian Universalists, who have come from quite a number of different traditions, and we don't ask them to give up anything that they are holding in their hearts or minds.
I understand you have the most open church that I have ever heard of or ever had any connection with, and you welcome atheists to come to your services.
Well, we like that when they...
Now, do your services on Sunday in any way include some acknowledgement of a superior being?
That's an interesting question, I could give you a long answer to that, but let me go to my direct answer. I believe personally that there is a spirit living in this life. I have done enough work in the Eastern traditions to know the value of breath. And I think that breath is essential to life. New Orleanians would be surprised to know that you can go longer without eating than you can without breathing. We can go quite some time without eating, but we have to be breathing.
Oh, well, I don't think anyone would contradict that.
Okay, but I mean, we feature eating so much, but breath is more important than eating.
Oh, no question about that.
All right, and so...
We're sitting here right now breathing, and we haven't had a thing to eat.
Right, and that runs through all of life. Even the little garden animals that I see when I'm out, the lizards and the birds and everything that I have out in my backyard, all are breathing. They too have the breath of life. And so, in the course of my spiritual journey, I have taken a number of steps to define myself as a panentheist.
Now you define that for us.
Okay. A panentheist says whatever is the mystery that's so profound that people can't fully grasp it, it was both before the Big Bang and exists in everything after the Big Bang.
You are now getting into physics, I think.
I'm talking about a number of different things that relate to each other. So when I see the word God, which many people refer to as being referring to the divine.
And you're talking with a capital G, God.
With a capital G on God. I substitute all that is. I say all that is. Because to me that's a better conception of divinity than to think of God as being just like Harry with a beard, sitting on a throne somewhere.
But when you talk about all that is, you're talking about universes.
I'm talking about
this is not
the entire universe.
Okay, but now this is more of a scientific feel than it is a theological feel about what all is and ever was and ever will be. That's physics, as I understand it. Quantum physics, which I don't understand.
Except that breath runs through all of it.
Breath.
Life runs through all of it. Spirit is connected in all of these ways.
But there was no life. You're saying through all of it. What life was there before the earth, came into being? Or other planets came into being? What life are we talking about?
This is a process of evolution.
From no life to life.
Right. And this is one of the places where we connect with atheists, or where I do, at least. And, is that all of this is evolving. It continues to evolve and has for 16 billion years.
Let us say that that your philosophy which you are describing And you're saying that is in general the philosophy of your church, what you're saying, or is that your unique personal view?
That's my unique personal view.
Okay.
But I am hired as minister, and so I share my unique personal view. And in the same way, I may be the only one who uses all that is to describe a mystery. For many years, I just said mystery.
All right.
And then for a few years, I used the word God because I felt people were uncomfortable with God, and that there is something, you know. Right. However, as Unitarian Universalists, we will find that both your ministers and your congregations will have many people who have different views, and the attitudes in each congregation is that the minister should not upset the flock too much, and that the flock should do their best to understand the minister.
I agree that your church is more open than any of the others that I know anything about. But are you saying, therefore, there is no need for an atheist Sunday get-together like the one that they had in Baton Rouge? Are you saying that's unnecessary?
It's a free world.
You're not saying. I didn't ask you whether they had the right to do it. Do you think there's a need for it?
Yes, I think there's a need for it.
Okay.
Just like there's a need for the group in London that you pointed out earlier.
Right. Now I have a couple of other things that I wanted to quote to you, and I think this came off the net. I don't know where I got it. It is somewhat of a contradiction in terms to think of a, quote, church without religion, said Kenneth Kuhlman, a religion professor at Loyola University in New Orleans. The secular service in Baton Rouge sounds, I'm still quoting from this article, sounds more like a gathering of secular humanists who experience a need for community, he said. But Kuhlman and Reverend Steve Crump, the senior minister at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge, agreed that there is likely an audience for such a gathering in the growing number of Americans who no longer go to church. So your answer to my last question, you're in agreement with them that there may be a need for such a thing. And then Crump, who was the let me add, yes,
for the reason of community, because people, some people might feel comfortable with the trappings of faith being released from some of the trappings of faith. That's an interesting way of putting that.
Some people, all right,
and so if there are a group of people who are atheists who like what church feels like,
yes,
but do not like necessarily what many churches say,
yes,
this might be an attractive place for them to go.
Well, the Reverend Crump from the Unitarian Church in Baton Rouge also said the key for a secular church should be to focus on community and the positives of life, which you and I would agree with. The Unitarian Church also accepts atheists and agnostics to its congregation. So what he's saying is that they accept them, as you have said, but it's not necessarily their group. They aren't necessary. If they went to the kind of non-religious meeting,
right,
where they sing and have talks about living a good life, then that is closer to what might add a dimension to their life than going to a Unitarian church. So you would agree that there may be a justification for such events.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, we don't have a whole lot of time, but you mentioned the word spirit a couple of times, which I don't understand. But I did an interview with a psychic, and she was talking about spirit that lives on because she also is convinced that she can have contact with dead people.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about, and I said, well, what is it that the body dies, the body rots in the grave, what is it that lives on? And she says, spirit. And so I said, well, are you talking about soul, the soul that lives on? I mean, you can say the spirit lives on, but religion says that's your soul. What is your view of soul?
Well, that's interesting because we're just starting a program at our church called Soul Matters.
Uh-huh. I'm glad I asked you.
You're right. And the soul refers to a number of the different components, some of which we are born with, and some of which develop during our life. We know that from psychology. And matters are all the various little things that do get incorporated in kind of our essence, the essential nature of who we are as people. So I like to think of soul as being, and I'm not so sure that I'm correct in this, soul as coming into life with us, and spirit as being in touch with incoming elements
which survive the physical body.
Yes, if particularly for those who would be reincarnationists, and we have in our church some reincarnationists.
You have a variety.
We have a variety of people. You can look at it that way, that you do past life regressions, and you could see previous lives that you have lived and had that experience. I studied a book, 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation, when I was in school. And life is big. life is huge. And I see, for example, in every person that I meet, a little bit of the stuff that makes each of us unique.
Well, I understand that. I do have to question anything living on beyond our physical beings, or having been there prior to,
Right.
there was I there before I was born, and am I going to be there afterward? And to tell you the truth, I hope not, because I would not like to exist through eternity, because eternity's a long time.
Yeah.
Jim, it's been a pleasure having
Thank
you
you
and talking to you, and I'm sure our audience enjoyed the program. Be with us again every week. We have some interesting things to talk about.